Hey everyone, I'm Michael Cole, VP of Marketing at Everflow. Today I'm joined by Cameron from BlueFire Leads, and we're going to be talking about what makes a lead generation agency successful. So as always, we're going to start with some quick fire questions. So Cameron, what is your role at BlueFire Leads?
I'm the director of affiliate marketing.
And what led you to join them in the first place?
They reached out to me about 3 years ago, asked if I would come in and help them build a department, their sales department first and foremost. And then I had transitioned throughout the years within the company, and now I'm at running the affiliate side.
Nice. And how did that relationship come about in the first place?
Through LinkedIn, I was reached out. I was doing something else, kind of doing my own business, and the gentleman reached out to me and asked if I would be interested to help a startup company, a small business company, because I have years and years of startup and small business company growth, and I'm like, sure, why not? I'm always open to talk to somebody, and it was a great fit. I love the processes. I love what they had internally, and so it was just a natural fit for me to join them.
And what was sort of your origin story for like getting involved with like startups in the first place? Were you always like entrepreneurial? Did you just join a startup and go from there? How did that come about?
Yeah, I think at a very, very young age, I've always loved the ability to now it's like keep what you kill, right? I remember selling cinnamon toothpicks. Growing up poor, we grew up poor. You just didn't have a lot of money, so you just try to figure out how to earn money. And I remember soaking toothpicks in cinnamon and boiling them and then drying them out, overnight, and then selling them in packs. Went from that to my dad went to the desert industry, which is kind of like a thrift store, and bought a boom box that had playing on one side and recording on the second side. And so then I would get up early in the morning and record the music that would play through the boom box. And it was like 90 minutes of uninterrupted music. And so I would record these and sell all these cassettes way back when. Hope these viewers most of these viewers probably don't even know what a cassette player is. And so it's grown from there, from yard work to selling to paper routes, to selling to doing babysitting, and then it's just grown to where it is today. So I've always had that mindset of just keep what you kill, grow what you kill, and love what you kill. So yeah, that's just where it's taken me, and that's where I've been thus far. So it's been good.
Sweet. And what initiative has taken the most of your focus this week?
Right now, it's call transfers. That's been the biggest push. The biggest growth that will be for our company is call transfers. But understanding, not all calls are the same, and not all companies that deliver call transfers are the same. There's a huge disparity, and there's a huge difference between the two. And it's vetting them out, having the right processes in place, asking the right questions, and not being afraid to just say no. So that's been the big focus this week, is growing that side of the company.
And so when you say call transfers, what does that actually look like? Is that basically like you take the call for one thing and then you transfer them to a relevant offer? Like what do you mean by call transfers in this case?
Yeah, so primarily what in this case it would be, buying calls from a third party publisher, right? And vetting them out, asking questions. My background is I've spent 15 years building out call floors and call centers, writing out. I can't even tell you how many call scripts that I have. But knowing the questions to ask is huge, and really diving into their processes. How are they acquiring that lead? What are they doing to get that lead? Everybody says, well, it's opt-in verified data, but what does that really mean? I mean, they're like, well, it's Journia or trusted form. Okay, but how are you getting somebody to see that? Are you cold calling? Are you buying age data? Are you buying, where are you getting, and how are you scrubbing this out against litigators? Because the biggest thing right now is, the call center spaces are taking a hit because of the amount of bot calling, and the amount of they call what's called power dialing, which is where you call 4 people at the same time, whoever picks up that's who you talk to. And so you have a drop rate you got to be within. So there's all of this information you have to understand. And so we buy click to call only. So there's multiple ways. So I only like click to call currently because that's somebody seeing an ad clicking a phone number and say, yes, I would like to talk to somebody more about this. And then that gets transferred over to our buyers. So that's the click the call. And then there's the live transfers, which is still click the call, but that gets generated. That call goes to an onshore call center. They ask them specific qualifying questions that they have to obtain a yes to. And once we get the yeses, then we push that over to our buyer. So that's what I mean by it's all inbound live transfers. Stay away. For me personally, you want to just stay away from live or outbound calling to generate a lead and then transfer, because that's where you can run into legal issues. That's where you see a lot of people getting in trouble. Lawsuits come because, listen, there are people out there that their whole thing is to troll companies and say, how'd you get my information? I want to see that, documentation, and you have a certain time frame that you can send that to them, or you automatically get hit with a $16,000 fine. So, be smart. That's, just what I've been vetting out for this entire week.
Do you think that's like the fascinating thing about the whole lead gen space is that there's a very like shady side to lead gen, but like so much of the companies that are actually successful, like it's all about making sure, like being the opposite, where like you have the cleanest leads, where like you are giving them exactly what you say you're giving them. It doesn't have to be the best leads. It just has to be the cleanest and the most honest. And that it's really fascinating that so much of like successful lead gen companies ends up being about vetting and validating.
100%. Look, I mean, lead generation has over the years taken a massive black eye, right? Because of that fact. Like, people have said, look, I've got the best leads, I got the quality leads. I mean, listen, quality is so subjective, right? It really comes down to what is my conversion rate? And the conversion is, I send you 100 leads. What is that? What is your sales reps? What are your people able to do with those leads? Now, the name of the game is this. I want to generate a lead as cheap as possible and sell that for them as most as possible. I'm a buyer. I want to buy that lead as the cheapest possible and have the biggest return. Well, so you have to find this happy medium, right? So one of the questions I love to ask is, you always ask them, what is your acceptable raw conversion, right? Because that's really what it comes down to. I send you a bunch of leads. What is that raw conversion going to look like? They are always going to lie to you because they're going to tell you what that conversion rate was 5 years ago when social media platforms, AKA Facebook, was so easy to cheap. You could buy leads at, pennies on the dollar. So they would say, oh yeah, look, my raw lead conversion has to be at 35%. Okay, well, that's what it was 5 years ago. What is it today? And so asking those questions, and they'll tell you, well, look, we don't go below 15%. Look, 15-20% raw lead is about industry standard. So as a lead gen provider, I'm going to say, okay, I know I have a source that I can get 30-35% because of the data that I get. I know I have another source that I'm floating around 8-10%. So I'm going to mix the two together and send that to them. My buyer knows that. My buyer knows that you're going to get a mix of really good data, which is going to cost you X. Then you're going to get a mix of data you're going to have to work a little bit, which costs you a little bit more, but blended, this is what you should see on the norm. And as long as you're upfront and honest with your buyers, they're going to respect you for that. Mm-hmm. Where you run into issues is where you try to say, oh, I can do this. The perception really is not the reality is, oh yeah, we got this. And then next thing you know it, 30 days later, they're turning you off and you still have an outstanding bill with them because they're like, I'm not paying for junk. Yeah. So that's really having those open and honest conversations in the lead gen space is what I think is slowly diminished over time. And those guys that have been in it for a long time, we know that those are where businesses won, is having those really good conversations, right? The second piece of that is just telling them, look, we suck in this space. This is where we suck. This is where we're terrible. But this is where we're really good. And so then not everybody's going to buy your leads, that's fine. But those that do buy your leads, you treat them like a true partnership, like they have a vested ownership in your company. And when they feel that, they definitely will respond by keeping you on. And now you're, 8 months, 2 years, 3 years, still providing leads for them.
So on that, why not just send them, like, cut out all the lower quality leads, only sell them the highest quality leads? Why not just the highest quality leads?
Because we're not a charity event. We're not a charitable company. Look, Because if I send you leads where you're converting 35, 40% of the time, you're only going to buy, you then can just reverse engineer it and say, well, crap, I know if I'm at 35, 40%, that I only need to buy so many leads from you per week. Now my lead distribution to you is now cut, you're cutting it in half, you're cutting it in by 20, 30%. Now you're losing money, right? And so you have to understand that's the game that we all play, right? I'm going to send you this, you're going to get a mix of this, and you're going to convert it this way. You're happy because you're making money. I'm happy because we're making money. So let's build a partnership together. Everybody's going to say, can you cut out this lead source, cut out this lead source. And you're going to have uncomfortable conversations because they're going to call back and say, hey, listen, this isn't working. We've seen this massive uptick. We got to figure out quality, which really comes down to we're not making sales. Mm-hmm. So when you ask them the questions, are you making sales? Why not? What are you getting into? That's why they all want the highest quality because it's the easiest sell to them. And so you just have to find that happy medium, always be upfront and honest with them, and you're going to have a good relationship.
And so why not just say hey, we'll sell you these, but it's 3 times, you need to pay us 3 times as much per lead.
Because they won't.
Yeah. I think that's what boils down to.
They're going to come back to you and say, hey, listen, I have another lead source. I mean, they're going to give it to me for this. Can you do that? And you're like, no, they can't. You wish they could. But let's be honest, everybody's great at lying. And that's just what this, you have to peel away all the BS and the lying. But because I don't know somebody that I'm selling a lead to, I don't know them from Adam. You don't know me from Adam. So it's always that weird, awkward relationship up front. But what I have found over the years is the more upfront, honest you are, the quicker a relationship can be formed, and a quicker you can start to trust each other on, are you going to, because what it comes down to is the buyer wants to know, are you going to take care of me when things go crappy? I'll take care of you, but are you going to take care of me? Not in the sense of you're going to give me money back, but are you really going to help me figure out this lead? Because it's seasonal, it's ebb and flow, it's highs, lows, and that's just, and understanding the space that you're in is also a big key to that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's fascinating. So the lead generation space is pretty interesting, that you'll have something that's super hot and then it'll just dry up entirely. How do you go about building new buyer relationships with different industries?
So, I always have a 6-month run with anybody that you bring on, right? Anybody new that you bring on, you're like, hey, for 6 months, we're going to do really good. And then after that, it's probably going to go cold. And that's what happens. It doesn't matter if you've been in the space for 15, 20 years, you're going to always, when you have new buyers, you got about a 4 to 6 month run with them. They're going to pause you, or they're going to be like, we're going to slow down. And it's because they're going to try another source. Because what happens is during that time, you're like, hey, price is going up because it's getting more expensive, right? To generate a lead. Buyers, guys, listen, buyers think this. Buyers simply think that there's these levers that you can pull and say, oh, if you pull this lever, then I just dump a bunch of leads to you. Oh, I can pull this lever, and this is where this lever has all the quality and this lever doesn't. Mm-hmm. And they don't understand that's not how lead generation works. Or, hey, I'm going to pause you for 2 weeks, but let's turn you back on. And they're like, all right, we need a ton of volume. It's doesn't work that way, man. I got to get time for my ads to get back up again. So you know that you bring somebody on, you have 6 months. So in that time frame, in that 6 months is really where you start vetting each other out, really where you start saying and building a partnership. About that 3 to 4 month mark, you're like, hey, look, just telling, hey, look, I know we're in the season, it's going to slow down a little bit. Where do we need to be so we're not turned completely off, but we're still generating maybe at 50% max what you want. Where do we need to be? And so you have those good conversations. Then what you do is you go to Google. It's very simple. Google Analytics, right? Type in keywords and say keywords in 2019 fourth quarter, keywords, 2020, 2021, summertime, fall, winter, and just see what people were searching in that time frame. Because history will always repeat itself. Marketing has that cyclical cycle, right? Every 40 years ago, 20 years ago, see what those ads were. And a lot of times those ads 20 years ago are what are relevant today. So if you're always in that growth mind of looking at the past so you know what the future will predict, you can be within, you're going to be within 20 to 30% accuracy. But what you don't want to do is get caught with your pants down when that relationship, when especially like to next month, right, September to December, there's going to be this massive shark frenzy with open enrollment, right? Mm-hmm. Once January hits, it's like nobody needs, like everybody's dead and there's no insurance and nobody wants insurance anymore. Well, okay, then, if you've built for that, if you like, all right, but what happens in January? Well, January, little Jimmy needed the new PS5 and little Betty wanted the hoverboard, right? So now my credit cards, which were at 20% debt, now I'm sitting at 60 to 80%, and life isn't getting any easier. So now we got to figure out, I need to reduce these quick. So you're always you're searching for keywords, what happened during those seasonal times. Two, you're asking questions, calling other lead gen providers, in this space, affiliate. Hey, what are you guys seeing? What are you hearing? Building those relationships, because everybody, partnerships are formed by just giving information, which is great because everybody's gunning for the same thing. But when you have those relationships, you have that partnership, it's a lot easier because people are like, hey, we're going to help you out. You help me out. And that's how I build. I'm always thinking the next quarter ahead. And that's what I do.
Awesome. And once you start actually having a ton of success with an offer and your traffic, how do you actually go about scaling that?
Data. 100% data. Look, guys, marketing is two things, right? You're the best storyteller and you are the best analytical advisor to yourself. So a couple of things is, one, everybody should learn how to do a pivot table and Excel spreadsheet, right? Not Google. You can do Google Sheets with this. It's fine. Excel Office Excel is the best, but you need to learn how to do a pivot table. I understand that you can take all the data and dump it in and have automated processes, which is fine. I'm old school because I know people make mistakes and one bad entry or one keyword or one label off, and it can mess your whole data set. So learn your pivot table so then you can build your own trends, you can build your own data points. And then once you start to see you're having success, then you reverse engineer. Why did we have success? What are we getting? Is success on a high level? And then you start to go micro level and say, what are we looking at? West Coast, the Rocky Mountain states, Central and Eastern, what are we seeing in there? And then you quantify it even more. You cut that into force and say upper, West Coast, lower north, Northwest Coast, Southwest Coast. Then you start looking at that on a granular level and saying, where am I seeing the best results? Because you could have the state of Utah. Oh man, Utah's crushing it. Is it all of the state? Is it some of the state? Are we labeling off? Are we gridding it? So then you really grind down and look at it and say, oh, well, shoot, man, the top right, bottom right are doing well, but this lower half is just horrible. All right. So you are having success. Well, now you need to figure out how do we build upon that success and how to really become granular with it. So then you can go back to your current buyers and become an advocate and say, hey, listen, I ran some numbers looking at the last 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, whatever it may be, and say, you guys were crushing it in this area, but we're not doing so well in this area. So let's do this. Let's take the budget we have for the lower performing areas. We'll take 40%, 50% of that budget. Let's move it to the areas that we're crushing it. Let us figure this part out, and then we'll keep going. That's how you build long-term relationships with people, and that's what we do. We look at that, have those good conversations, because when your buyers realize that you really are looking out for their best interests, they're going to open that up even more, which they absolutely love. So know the data, understand the data, live within the data, know the pivot tables. If you don't, Google it, do a quick YouTube, Excel spreadsheet, Excel pivot tables, and it'll teach you so much and you'll learn so much.
I think that's great advice, but I will say that's one of the nice things about using Everflow is that our dimensional analytics is a real-time pivot table. So you can just click on okay, for this advertiser and this offer I'm promoting, how is the performance? And you can see the cities, the countries, the partners, the placement. So this is such essential data for so many companies. And honestly, like even for us, like a lot of companies have never looked at the dimensional analytics reports. They just like, oh, it's something that is outside of my like daily routine, so they never check it. But it's crazy how powerful it is to just view your performance. Like there's a lot of things on like Google Analytics is about like your traffic data, but
Mhm.
looking at your actual performance of like what is your leads or your purchases and saying like where did these come from, what were the placements, what were the cities, what were the, was it desktop, mobile, like just a little bit of that insight lets you completely change how you manage your campaign. So highly recommended whether you're using the analytics report or a spreadsheet, like it helps so much.
Let me make a point to that, because that's key. What you're saying is big, because when you can look at it and say, hey, look, most 80% of where traffic comes through anyways is coming off of your desk, off your mobile phone, right? And you understand, is it an Android or iOS? Like you understand, okay, this is where it's coming from. But what happens is when you can know at what time of the day that lead come through, was it on their phone? Then you can reverse engineer everything and say, okay, listen, how many of these leads came in this batch? Because listen, if a lead comes in at 12 o'clock, from 12 to 1 o'clock, they're at lunch. I mean, that's just how it is. If I know that lead comes in, 5:30 to 6:30, I'm done with work. Or am I at 8 and 9, on the mobile, then you're like, oh, okay. Then you can start to really target heavily, posting those ads, pushing those ads. Maybe you take a buy and say, look, we're gonna spend as much as we can between these hours, and then we are not gonna spend hardly anything between these hours, because now we're just losing money, right? I mean, if you want to lose money, I'll send you my address. You can cut me a check. I will spend that money the best way possible. But understanding that granular level on analytics is massive, because then you really are going to your partner and saying, listen, we're going to spend the most between here and here, so you're going to see an influx of leads. But between here and here, you're not going to see a ton, because it doesn't make financially doesn't make any sense for you or us to really push hard. So that's a big, that's a big win for you guys. If it's doing that, that's huge.
Yeah, and I mean that's an interesting thing you mentioned as well, because like with our thing, you can basically set like, okay, here's a time window for this offer, and if it's outside of this time window, it's basically an invalid click, and it will be redirected to another offer that is relevant to that user. So if you're doing a city targeted campaign, if they're invalid, it's going to find a city that matches that user. So there's a lot of stuff you can start doing with this too, is like maybe one lead campaign is good during like the afternoon and another one's good in the morning. And you can actually redirect those leads to different offers based on like what is the time period and which offer suits that best.
That's awesome.
Sweet. So I know that like one of the big parts of your business is around the call tracking and everything else. Like how does that fit into your business? Like is most of your leads going through the call? Is that like a portion? How does that fit in?
Yeah, well, between 2020 and 2022 was a huge portion of our business. We had a ton of call tracking that we were doing and analyzing and monetizing. Beginning of this year, because we shut that part of our business down, we are back to, obviously it still goes to, we're pushing into, people's CRMs, their dialers and stuff. So we still see a big portion of that call tracking on our end. But anything that you want to it's all about performance. You want to see how things are performing. If you can push your leads right into an actual dialer, it's the best, because you get instant, you can get instant information back. Especially if it's API'd, if it's API'd out of their system into your system, you are seeing almost real time all the dispositions that are coming through. And that's invaluable, right? Because then you can see kind of on a daily, on a weekly, and on a 2-week run. But then it helps you not make really knee-jerk reactions, and that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to make a knee-jerk decision based off of, well, I feel, felt, and think. But yeah, I mean, call tracking is massive for anybody who's buying or selling or generating leads, because you want to be able to see exactly what I am doing. So that's why a lot of partners like to buy live leads, transfer leads, because they get that instant access, as opposed to, I'm going to sell you a form and then we have to wait for you to send me those dispositions.
That's very interesting. And how are you actually analyzing the calls themselves to be like, okay, these were all very good calls, this one is generating like low quality calls? So like, how do you actually do the sort of like validation of what's actually in the call?
Well, what I did when we had our floor was we had a QA QC team, and they listened for, you know, keywords that you have. So some of the keywords were, are they in a buying decision, or is it more just a I'm a fact finding, I'm in a finding decision. So we used to have keyword metrics. Is how many times did somebody say yes? How many times did someone say exactly? Or how many times did someone say this? Yep, this is what I'm looking for. So we'd have metrics on that, and then other metrics like, oh, I'm just thinking, you know, maybe it'd be good. So, you know, being able, because a lot of call tracking platforms have that ability to analyze, and especially if you have voice dictation, where it will basically transcribe the entire call for you, and then in there you can build certain type of, you know, metrics or keywords, and it will go and analyze all that and then rank them. Hey, you know, 30% of the time it said this, 20% did this, 5% said this. So that was huge. I mean, we did that on a level that we had, which was good. We still had, you know, we'd have it analyzed, and we would go to parts of that conversation that said, okay, let's listen for it. And then it was great on the coaching. So the coaching for the salesperson, but it's also good for us to be able to pull out those keywords, and then you can use them in the ad sets that you're building. And that's what's huge for marketers, to get those, what are people saying on the phone, and then take that and build it into their you know, build it into the ads, their creatives, because then it becomes more like it's a conversational, it becomes human as opposed to just robotic on the ad.
That is super interesting. So on the B2B side, there's a couple companies that do this, like Gong or Course.ai.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear great things about them, but I don't know if there's any that is well suited for like the lead gen space. Because like the problem with Gong and Course is they are priced for enterprise and they're quite expensive. Is there like a cheaper solution that can just sort of like look through the keywords of transcripts and like pull out snippets and stuff like that?
There is, yes. Dang, I'm gonna kick myself because it's on the tip of my tongue. I met their great relation with their VP of sales, Kia Knight.
We can revisit it when it comes
Yeah.
to talking.
Dang, I just had to. Yeah. Anyways, but they'll do that. I mean, they'll be able. They literally pull out. They'll transcribe the entire phone call, and then they'll rank different keywords. Plus, you can put in there too, like if your sales rep, how many times do they say the word how long is the pause? It's really, really cool. It will, you know, it'll come to be part of this conversation. It'll pop up and go, oh, that's what it is.
So time out more about calls, like sort of like what are the best practices there, like the things that you should definitely keep in mind if you want to incorporate the call side into your like lead gen business?
If you're going to do that, you want to stay away, for me personally, stay away from buying age data. That is where you will get into the biggest lawsuits. That's where the trolls are, where they sit and just wait for people to call them and ask, how did you get my information? That's where you're going to be in big trouble on. Now, look, there's probably going to be a bunch of people that will DM me and be like, hey, we sell age data. That's inaccurate. I'm like, you're right. You do. It's never about if, it's about when you're going to get caught. And so for me, best practices is stay away from buying age data. Age meaning that if it's past 90 days, just don't even bother with it. There's enough business, there's enough data out there, there's enough lead gen stuff out there that you can get that you don't need to. So in the sense of if you're buying leads, or if you're trying to incorporate that into your day-to-day, what you need to do is figure out who's the audience you're going to sell this to. I get it. Look, if it's solar, that's fine. You have to understand the solar space. And here's what I mean. In the East Coast, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Baltimore, look, they have listened for the last 20 years, every pitch you can imagine known to man about solar. There's not anything in the creative that you're going to write that's going to be like, oh, that's groundbreaking. I've never thought of it that way. So you have to understand, how are you tailoring your ad to have somebody call in? Because when we were calling New York leads, they were like, all right, here's what I know. The state runs this, the government gives me this, this is what it's at, this is where it's at. How are you different? And you don't want to give that to a call center rep, because they're like, these leads suck, which is true because they're hard. Midwest, not a lot of people go into after Midwest and solar. So, you understand like what the states are doing, and you really have to become a researcher, right? You really have to understand what the state initiatives, what the local levels are, cities, and then you can tailor it that way. And then of course the mountain states and the West Coast states. So really you have to understand, who is your target buyer? Who do you want to buy these leads, and what are you going to sell them at? If you're generating, hey, we get to ask them a bunch of questions, are you the homeowner? Is your credit score this? Is shading? Is your taxable income this? Yeah, I mean, I can do that on a form, and I can cut you out. Why would I pay $150 for that lead if I can just pay $50 on a form fill? Well, have them on the phone. That doesn't mean anything, right? So you want to figure out how granular you want to ask a few additional questions, right? Sales is always about getting 7 yeses. So if you can get 7 yeses on the phone call, are your name this, this, and this, and ask 2 more really in-depth questions, then you're really generating what are called quality phone calls, which you can charge a premium for. So it's just about understanding who your big buyers are, who do you want to attract, and then just say no to age data. I mean, that's how it is. I'm getting ready. I better change my DM stuff, because I'm probably going to get blown up.
Sweet. So we've talked about the buyer side. Let's switch to the traffic side. What are the major channels you're using to actually generate these leads in the first place?
Social is the biggest one currently. Look, the TikTok game and the YouTube game is still very, very strong. Facebook continues to be there from a volume play, but from you generate a lead, you send me a bunch of 100 leads in Facebook. I know that my raw conversions are going to be about 8 to 10%. So if you need traffic, if they need to just flood them with traffic, Facebook is good. It's going to give you what you need. TikTok is going to be a lot different, because it's more of an influence. People buy now from people they trust. If I can see you and I can see you have a personality, then I'm more apt to say, okay, yeah, I'll take a look at that, And so if your business or your ads or whatnot are on TikTok, that's where the buyers are. YouTube, kind of the same way, right? Billions of people go to YouTube stuff throughout the entire month. And so that's where if they know that you're going to put an ad on YouTube, the high likely is, okay, it's a trusted source, it's a vetted source, not just anybody's going to push this on here to be dumb, So that's good. Pinterest, Pinterest is, Pinterest is weird, especially if you're in the home improvement space, because let's be honest, DIY people are on there like crazy. And if you can't do it, click the link and then talk to somebody. So there's a lot of really cool mediums out there. Google obviously is still dominate, but you got to be, you're going to be paying a premium to get that ranking up. You're going to pay a premium for that. And so there's just WhatsApp has done really well. For some reason, people are on WhatsApp, so they generate through that. Snapchat, I know that people do. Twitter. So it's a lot of these, just understanding the different mediums that people use and where you can see the most eyeballs. And then again, it goes back to keywords. If I look for a specific industry, what in that industry are the words that I'm using? So just be an investigator. That's the best thing you can do.
And you use a fair amount of affiliates as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah. Affiliates. Look, man, I love them. That's why I'm in the affiliate space, man. I mean, if I can have 30 people sending me traffic, then I basically am hiring 30 marketers plus all of their publishers. I mean, crap. I mean, I could have 100 people that get one person to me, and I'm like, why try to reinvent the wheel, right? Just add more grease to it and let it run faster.
How do you find these affiliate relationships in the first place?
I love LinkedIn. LinkedIn is huge. I have a lot of relationships through Skype, and just asking people. I'll ask hey, who do you use? Who generates? Oh, you should talk to somebody. Being part of just affiliate spaces on the different. Facebook has them, Instagram has them, LinkedIn is big. You post something. Hey, I'm buying X. Who has something? And they're gonna you'll get all kinds of inquiries. I mean, that's not the hard part. The hard part is vetting people out. So having a process and procedure in place that you use. I use a 10-point system to vet somebody out. If I can verify all 10 points, then we're at the starting. But I got to get all 10. I don't care if it's 9.5, it's got to be 10. So use a system metrics that works for you. That way you can vet everybody out.
I want to go back to one of the points you made because it's funny. I had the same conversation with HubSpot's head of affiliate, and she was saying that like one of the sort of secrets that they learned is that with like their strategic partners, asking them like, hey, what affiliates are you working? If you're both going after the same audience, but you're not competitive, just sharing each other's like, hey, these affiliates are awesome to work with. They do a really great job. Here, let me make introductions. Like that's a very powerful way to sort of make your business to business partnerships like get a ton of scale in a way that is a win-win for everyone. So I think it's very interesting that you're also doing that in the lead gen space, and really something that people don't think about.
Look, asking for referrals is a lost art. I mean, people just don't ask for referrals anymore, and I don't understand why. Because the easiest way to gain trust from somebody is, hey, I was referred to you by so and so. Oh, we love them. So if they're referring you to me, then they must, one, think highly of me, and two, you must be a good company to work with. And so, asking for that referral is great. The other little tip I'll give you guys, which not all people do, but I don't know why. So if you give content on, there's a gentleman that I follow on LinkedIn, and he basically has said, 2.5 years ago, he started just giving out free content on lead generation, right? Mm-hmm. How he does it, what he does, he broke it down. He went from three employees in a year and a half, he's at like 50 employees. And he has more business now than he's ever had. Giving out the content and free content with people builds your credibility. So if you're a business owner, and if you are new to lead gen space, or if you've been in the business for a bit and you want to give out that content for free, then people are like, okay, you know what you're saying, the vernaculars are right, the acronyms you're using, you can see the data. We'll follow you a little bit more just so you're not the here today, gone tomorrow guy. But a lot of people, I give content on LinkedIn, but a lot of people will hit me up and say, all right, you're in lead gen, I'm in lead gen, let's talk. All right, cool. Yep. If you can find it, great. If you can't, I mean, that's just what but I also get the pushback of, well, if I share what I'm doing, people are just going to rip it off. Newsflash, people already do what we do. There's nothing different that we're doing that somebody else out there, or some kid that's in his parents' basement, who just is, all he wants to do is watch, Twitch and play Call of Duty, right? And that's generating a lead. But just because you know what I do doesn't necessarily know how to implement and execute at the level that I do. And that's where the big difference is, right? History and years of knowledge will always supersede, the new guy coming in who thinks he knows but doesn't really know.
Not to mention, you have both the relationships and the like self-confidence to be honest with your buyers. Like you can copy everything, but being honest takes a lot of confidence, and a new buyer is not going to be able to be that honest. I can think like, what if they like screw me over? What if they stop buying because I told them this information? It's like, that's something that the only way you're really going to know that is like feeling it in your bones because you've been in the trenches.
Oh my gosh. Look, I love barbecuing. I love barbecue. I love cooking ribs. I love cooking steak. I love cooking all the wonderful things. It's lunchtime. So of course, but I learned something from a really good friend of mine who owns his own barbecue shop, 15 years. He says, listen, the only way to know how to cook really good ribs is to make really bad ribs. The only way to know how to cook a really good steak is to screw up on really good steak. When you screw up on a $30, $40 steak, 1, 2, 3, 4 times, you're like, dude, I screwed up this steak. I had 2 steaks at $40. I'm at $80. I screwed up 4 times. You're $160 into mess up. You will find out really quick what to and what not to do on that steak. Lead gen's the same way. You're going to screw up. You're going to mess up, which is totally fine. Everybody knows that. But what are you doing? How are you learning from it? You're going to lose businesses. People are going to get super pissed. If I could tell you, look, here's a fun story for you. I worked lead gen. The first lead gen company that I ever worked with was with my older brother. He owned a company, and I came in and ran the analytical side, and I was controlled on the spending. Right? We were running an ad for a famous R&B singer, and I'm like, sweet, this is awesome. And it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It was this big push. I'm like, I love this. My brother, if he listens to this, he's gonna laugh. So I forgot to put a little tag on one. A little tag. This is pre-automation, guys. This is 2010 Google, right? I forgot to put a little tag on there. And in 3 days, I cost this $1 million. I basically gave away $1 million. So to have that conversation with anybody is not fun. But to have it with your brother who you're in business with, that, let me tell you, it was, dinners were a little they were a little bad. But so if you're like, you're gonna make a mistake. I mean, yeah. I know guys that have lost tens of millions of dollars because of one little key thing or one little tracking they forgot to put. But you're not going to know what you're doing unless you get in there and start pulling levers. And when you mess up, you own it and say, look, I own it. Like, I screwed up. This is my bad. I had all the parts and pieces. I ran it by. I didn't do one more quality check. So to get around that, people go, how do I know? You need to have a checkpoint, A, B, C, D. Anytime that we bring on somebody live, new, we will sign docs. It's a 2-week onboard. We always go live on a Wednesday because that gives us enough time to make sure we are 99% clear with what we're doing. And that's fine. You need to have that checkpoint in place, that policy procedure, and how you bring people on. And at the end of the day, if it works, great. If it doesn't, you learn and you grow and you keep getting better.
Yeah, I mean, if you can lose tens of millions of dollars, you've done a lot of stuff right in between, and like you don't make any shots if you don't take them.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. So what do you think will change about lead generation significantly in the next couple of years?
Automation. The automation process has and will continue. I mean, it will. It's one of those supercomputers. As developers, as marketers turn into developers, and developers really have that understanding. These younger kids that are learning how to code at such a young age, but are their brains are so just computer analytically driven. That's the automation of marketing is going to be absolutely crush this industry. So that's what you want to focus on, is really get into that automation process. There's plenty of companies out there that offer automation. Are they inventive? What are they doing? I go listen to YouTube stuff if their CEOs are talking about it. Learn, understand, have conversations with these companies. Get on a Zoom call and say, hey, show me your product, demo the product for me. You may not buy it, which is fine, but being in the know of the automation is going to be crazy. I actually got a phone call. You can YouTube this, but I got me personally, I got a phone call from a Google, like somebody with Google, and I went through the whole call, and it said at the end, it said, just so you know, this is not a human. And I was like, there's no way. There's no way. And literally the phone call it sounded like you and I are talking. The tone and fluctuation in the voice, it was the craziest thing in the world. But yeah, that's where it's going. The automation process is going to go, and those that can change and those that understand that space, it's going to be big. The second part I would say is the metaverse, right? The metaverse, which is still, you get on there and play around, you're like, man, these are just like 1980 graphics. Yep. The avatars are just junk. Yeah, but let me tell you what, I have a really good friend. She had changed her whole business model 2.5 years ago, and she is building universes for billion-dollar companies. And that's where a lot of people are spend time, is on the metaverse. So, understanding the automation and the metaverse or spaces like that, that's where marketing is headed.
Yeah, I think that's also just part of like our entire performance industry is if there's anything with a ton of people and no one has figured out how to like advertise on it, you get in that first wave when it's cheap, like you print money and then eventually you pivot.
Yep. And that, you made a great point. It's all about pivoting, right? What I'm doing today is not going to be sustainable.
Yeah.
What am I going to be doing a year from now? And that's where you're always pivoting. And that's what you have to love about marketing is you got something great 6 months from now, you're obsolete.
Yeah. But I mean, that's where the relationships come in here because I mean, from our side, like we have like Ross and Kristen and like they're old school from the lead gen space, and every single conference people always come up and like want to just shoot the shit with them and catch up and stuff because like if you have a good reputation in the lead gen space, people want to work with you 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and it doesn't go away. Like the people that have figured out how to make it work and have relationships and authenticity, like people keep wanting to work with them, and there's always going to be a new opportunity. And the important thing is that none of those bridges were burned, and in fact, like everyone wants to take the bridges they trust.
You know what? And that's the biggest downfall currently with lead gen, right? Is back in the day, you used to shake hands. We used to meet each other at conferences, and we would sit down and we're like, "You agree, you agree," and we would shake hands, and our word was our bond. Now we meet like this, which is totally fine because we can meet, more people. You can have more of an audience. You can have 100 people on this phone call, and everybody's like, "Yeah, I absolutely love it." And that's huge because the one thing you don't want to be in the lead gen space, especially the affiliate, is you don't want to be blacklisted. Because once you have the name of blacklisted, you better change your identity, your look, your hair color, your skin color, everything. Because people will go, no, they burned me. Not by they're terrible, they're crap, whatever it may be. And so that authenticity from people is huge, right? And you just say, listen, I can't, but I know somebody who can. And you're always trying to share that information. People will come to you and say, look, I got somebody you got to call. And that next business eventually someone brings could be huge for you. So always keep your word. Even if you screw up, own it up. Don't be afraid. They're not going to hunt you down. They're not going to knock on your door. I remember when I was first in sales, I made a massive error in a sell, and I literally thought this person that was in New York, it was my first sale I ever did, selling gateway computers, was going to drive to my house in Utah, knock on my door, and punch me. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was so funny. But it's okay. Just own what you did and have confidence, and you'll learn over time how to build that confidence and that authenticity.
Yeah, it's just so important in this industry. Like it's fascinating. Like I've definitely worked with a few companies where it ended up being like 80% of their traffic was like fraud, and it's just like the person was like very honest and responsive and just like looked into it, and like I didn't work with them again, but I also like never thought poorly of them because like they owned up to it. It was handled with respect or what, because like the worst thing is when they send you fraud and then they get like really hussy, like angry about it, and they're like, no, it was good, how dare you. And like anytime you have to like go through the scrubbing conversation, it's miserable. So just someone who is like honest and like tries to do as best as they can in the situation and make sure that like it doesn't happen again, like those relationships don't get burnt. It's the problem is when you like try to like pretend it didn't happen or don't admit to it or become really like shady. Like that's when people want to just blacklist you and never deal with you and tell everyone else, hey, stay away from this person.
Yep, 100%.
Cool. So thank you again so much for sharing your expertise with us, Cameron. Like, how can people learn more about you and your agency?
Look, I mean, you can, easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn. Cameron, I'm just typing my name, Cameron Gilmore. You can go to BlueFireLeads.com. That's the company's website. Those are the best ways. You can send me an email, Cameron@BlueFireLeads.com. I'm an open book. I've got, my first sales job was in 1999. That'll tell you how old I am. So, I follow the montage. Acquired knowledge is great, but unshared knowledge is useless. So, hit me up. I've got, it's fun, but just love what you do every day. develop personally, develop mentally, develop emotionally, develop business wise. And you guys will crush this space, man. I'm trying to keep up with the younger kids from a process part. They're trying to keep up with me on an energy level. So this has been awesome, man. I appreciate what you do. Bringing awareness out to people is massive, especially in this space. It helps build confidence back that lead gen is not dying, but it is growing.
Yeah, it's definitely not dying. There will always be a lot of money, a lot of opportunity there.
Yep, exactly.
All right. Thanks again. Have a wonderful Friday and wonderful weekend.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike.
Cheers.